Hey guys, Becky here, FiveTwoBaker. Welcome back to my channel. So this week we are doing an uber simple, beginner friendly winter scene cake painting tutorial. It's a very long title, but a very simple painting. I think this is a really great tutorial for beginners because of the minimal tools, colors, and because you don't need a steady hand. So if that's something that you struggle with, this is definitely the cake painting tutorial for you. Stick around and take a look. It's just a simple night scene with some trees, and if you want to go the extra step, you can go ahead and add a fawn, but you don't need to. I think it would be just as beautiful on its own, but let's get right to it. So I'm gonna start with the night sky on the cake. I'm using Wilton's Delphinium Blue, and I'm diluting it with food grade alcohol. I'm going to use a brush to carry it onto the cake, and then I'm going to use a makeup sponge to blotch it. I take my color about 3/4 of the way down to the cake, having a darker color at the top and a fainter color at the bottom. The reason that I don't use a brush to add all the color and move it around is because I would get too even of a coverage or too streaky of a coverage, and what I want is blotchiness to imitate the night sky and have clouds and stars. That's what all my lighter areas are gonna look like, and so the makeup sponge just gives me better blotchy coverage. I want it to be imperfect. Once I'm just about happy, I add a little more of some darker color just to really make that blotchiness stand out. The imperfection works really well in the night sky, at least in the style that I'm doing it. Once I'm happy, I go ahead and rinse off my brush, and I grab a dark brown and make a line straight down to where I want the tree to be. And I make sure that the bottom is thicker so that I have a thicker trunk. For the branches, I'm going to use Wilton's Juniper Green, and I'm going to dilute it very little so that it stands out against the night sky. I'll have a terrible pictorial showing you what direction the branches go in because it's really hard to tell with this green, but basically have a really shaky hand and make your branches point to the sky, then start to flatten out horizontally, and then start to curl down and up, increasing the number of branches the further down you go. Now, the reason you want a really shaky hand is to give the illusion of fuzzier branches. I wouldn't flick this out smooth. Definitely have a shaky hand here and fill in as you need. If you want to use varying greens, definitely go for it, but I just use varying shades of the same green. Now I'm going to work on the rest of the scene, so I wipe away any blue that is just too much for me, that maybe I went too far with, and I do that by just wiping it off with some water, making sure not to get the fondant too wet. And once I'm happy with that scene, I go ahead and draw the other trees. Now, with the wiping away of the blue, you don't have to wipe all of it away perfectly because the blue will act as shadows on the snow, and you can clean that up a little bit further later depending on how much shadow you want on the snow. The trees that I'm doing in my background, I do exactly the same as I did the big ones. I just make sure that the further back in the scene that they are, the smaller that they are. So definitely less of a fuss here because they're so small, you don't need to focus in on as much detail. Just remember, if they're in the back, then make sure that they're smaller and the other trees truly are colored on top of them, if that makes sense. I go ahead and I repeat this on both sides. And then I clean up my snow scene a little bit more. I take away any blue that's too dark, but I make sure to leave just a hint of blue around the trees so it looks like there's little mounds of snow. The blue, again, it acts a little bit as a shadow, so it's not perfectly gleaming clean white. Now I have a little sketch of a fawn that I drew on paper, and I am transferring it onto the fondant. What I'm going to first do is outline all the parts, and then I'm going to go in with a honey color which could really just be a very, very faint brown mixed in with a bit of yellow. And I color the entire fawn in, and then with a dark brown, I go ahead and begin to outline all its features and then color the rest of its fur so that it blends in with that honey color that I put to begin with. Once I'm happy with that color, I go ahead and outline it again with the dark brown, and I try to give it a little bit of a flick when I'm coloring with it so it looks a little more like fur, and definitely paint in the direction of the fur so that if you have any streaks, they at least look like they're part of the fur. I go ahead and darken in the hooves, darken in the nose, and the little swoop of the sleepy eye. And then I'm going to add just little, almost like scratch marks of dark brown on shades to distinguish between the little legs that are curled together, behind the ear, behind the head a little bit, just to give it some darker spots and some lighter spots. I color the entire head, but I'm going to go around the eye with a white in just a bit. I make sure to give it a little bit of white on the tail and those little white spots that fawns have. Add a little white fur to the ear, and then you're just about done with the fawn. Again, it's really little, so you don't have to go into as much detail, but it's all up to you. You could skip this altogether and it would still look beautiful. Now that my paint is just about dry on my trees, I'm going to go ahead and start adding some snow. For the snow, I suggest if you're using food color to just use straight food color so it's a little thicker. You don't want it to fade out and just turn into a light green. The other option is to use food color powders and dilute it with just a little bit of food grade alcohol so that it's thick like an acrylic paint. That's what I used, and I like it because it goes on thicker and it has a little bit of a 3D effect to it, so that's really nice. What I try to do when I'm putting the snow on the tree is think about where it would land naturally, and then I take this snow to help me identify the branches in the front also. So I don't just put them on the sides, but I use it to help highlight all these middle branches that you otherwise couldn't see because my entire tree was a really dark green. I thought that was really fun. Then I go ahead and repeat on all the little trees in the background. Again, you can be a little messy with this. It's okay because it's all the way in the back. You won't be able to tell, and it's all just gonna look really cute anyway. Now, I decided to go ahead and add a moon. At this point, I'm just fussing with everything, and all that I do for the moon is just take out some of the blue color. I'm going for a little bit more of a crescent moon than a full moon. So I just swoop out a little bit of the food color and fuss with it until I'm happy. I just want it to glow a little bit. And then for the snow, I take just straight food color, and using my paintbrush, I flick it all around. Be careful, this gets super messy. Definitely protect your workspace. And you are all done. You have a beautiful night scene, and it wasn't too bad. All right, guys, that was it. Hopefully you liked it. As always, if you have any questions, do drop them down in the comments below and I will get back to you. If you liked this video or found it helpful, please do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I would appreciate that so much. And let me know what else you would like to see. This video I actually put together because someone suggested I do a scene. So thank you so much for that suggestion, and I will see you guys for the next video.